In the early 1980s, the Soviet Union's main newspaper, meaning Truth, had a daily circulation of over 10 million copies. That's 10 million identical messages every day across 11 time zones. This wasn't just news. It was the state manufacturing a single reality for 280 million people. The Soviet media machine was the backbone of state power, saturating every aspect of life with the party's voice. Control wasn't just about force. It was about the relentless daily administration of ideas. By dominating information, the Soviet leadership aimed to create the new Soviet man, loyal, hardworking, and devoted to the communist cause. From morning radio to school lessons, there was no escape from the party's narrative. The sheer volume of propaganda made alternative viewpoints nearly impossible to access or even imagine. This is the story of how the Soviet state built its reality, one word, one image, one broadcast at a time. The Soviet project aimed to create the new Soviet person, selfless, disciplined, and loyal to the collective above all else. Propaganda was the tool for this transformation, shaping how people thought, felt, and acted. History was rewritten, science reframed, and art repurposed to serve the party's vision. Every aspect of culture reinforced Soviet identity, leaving no room for alternative ways of being. But people are complex. Private thoughts and personal loyalties persisted beneath the surface. The gap between public conformity and private reality became a defining feature of Soviet life. While propaganda suppressed dissent and demanded loyalty, it couldn't fully erase individuality. The state's fantasy of total control clashed with the enduring human desire for freedom. The result was a society where outward enthusiasm often masked inner skepticism. The new Soviet person was an ideal, never fully realized, but always pursued. The tension between public and private selves shaped the Soviet experience. To realize its vision, the Soviet government built a vast propaganda apparatus, led by the powerful Agitprop department. Agitprop set the ideological line for the entire country, dictating what stories, themes, and enemies should dominate public discourse. Every institution, from newspapers to schools to the military, had its own propaganda unit, ensuring top-down message control. This system allowed the state to speak with a single, unified voice, mobilizing the population behind its goals. Censorship was built in. Nothing could be published or broadcast without passing through layers of approval. Bad news and inconvenient truths were simply erased from public view. The world presented to Soviet citizens was a carefully curated reality where the party was always right. The propaganda machine didn't just inform, it defined what was real. In the Soviet Union, the state's voice was everywhere, and it was absolute. Before TV, Soviet posters were the state's visual megaphone. Bold, simple, and everywhere. These posters weren't just art, they were political weapons, designed to be instantly understood by all. Their themes shifted with the time's literacy, industrialization, wartime sacrifice, scientific achievement. The imagery was clear heroic workers, wise leaders, and a stark contrast between us and them. Posters made politics look simple. A battle of good, the USSR, versus evil, the West. Their constant presence embedded the party's vision into daily life. Even skeptics couldn't escape the visual language of Soviet power. The posters didn't just tell people what to think. They showed them what the world was supposed to look like. Repetition made the message feel like common sense. In the Soviet Union, the poster was reality in living color. Newspapers were the daily script for Soviet life, with at the center truth in name, but not always in content. Soviet citizens joked, "No news in Izvestia, no truth in Pravda." These papers didn't report events, they interpreted them through the party's lens. Headlines celebrated successes, while disasters were ignored. Reading between the lines became a survival skill. What was left unsaid often spoke volumes. Every publication, from national dailies to local weeklies, echoed the party line. The result was a media echo chamber, making the official narrative seem like the only possible truth. Newspapers told you what to think, who to praise, and who to fear. The party was the sole author of reality, and the press was its pen. In the Soviet Union, the news was never just news, it was instruction. Radio bypassed barriers of literacy and distance, bringing the state's voice directly into homes and public spaces. Loudspeakers in villages and cities broadcast state-approved music, news, and political commentary. The news was identical to, delivered in a tone of absolute authority. Radio created shared experiences, children's programs, leaders' speeches, and wartime broadcasts that united the nation. The state also jammed foreign stations, building an electronic iron curtain to block outside voices. For most, the only voice they heard was the one sanctioned by the government. Radio was more than entertainment. It was a tool for shaping minds and binding the country together. In the Soviet Union, the airwaves belonged to the state. The Soviet education system was designed to mold loyal citizens from the earliest age. From kindergarten, children were immersed in communist symbols, songs, and stories. Every subject reinforced the party's worldview, history, literature, even science. Youth organizations like the Young Pioneers and Komsomol structured children's lives around party values. Political loyalty was instilled as a basic truth, not a matter of debate. The school system was a factory for the new Soviet person, producing conformity and obedience. For generations, communism was taught as fact, not theory. Education was the deepest form of propaganda, shaping minds before they could question. What if you disagreed? In the Soviet Union, dissent was a crime. The KGB enforced conformity, and even a joke or a private opinion could ruin your life. Punishments ranged from job loss and social ostracism to arrest and years in the Gulag. Vague laws made almost any act anti-Soviet. Some dissidents were declared insane and locked in psychiatric hospitals, their opposition labeled as madness. Fear and self-censorship became second nature. People led double lives, publicly loyal, privately doubtful. Informants were everywhere, making trust dangerous. The propaganda machine told you what to say. The security state made sure you said it. Together, they enforced a climate of silence and obedience. In the Soviet Union, a different thought could cost you everything. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, but its propaganda legacy lingers. Generations grew up in a world where information was a tool of power, and truth was whatever the state said it was. The Soviet experience is a cautionary tale about the relationship between information and freedom. It shows how controlling media, education, and culture can be as powerful as controlling the police. Today we face new challenges: information overload, digital manipulation, and algorithmic echo chambers. The tools have changed, but the struggle over truth and narrative continues. Understanding Soviet propaganda isn't just history, it's a lesson in media literacy for our own time. We must always ask, who is telling this story and why? The battle for truth is never over. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.